Eliza always believed family came first. When her grandmother passed away, leaving her a cozy blue house with a willow tree in the backyard, Eliza trusted her parents to manage it while she worked overseas. They'd promised to take care of everything, pay the taxes, handle repairs. But when Eliza returned after 2 years, her key didn't fit the new lock. A sold sign stood crooked in the yard, and her parents' smiles were too bright. "We had no choice," her father said, rubbing his temples. "Medical bills, your mom's surgery. You understand, right?" Eliza nodded slowly, but something felt off. Her grandmother's last words echoed. "The house is yours. Keep the papers safe." That night, Eliza dug through old boxes in her apartment. Beneath childhood photos, she found a faded envelope stamped with a lawyer's seal. Inside was the deed, her name bolded as sole owner, dated the day she turned 25. Her hands shook. The medical bills were a lie. Racing to the county office, a clerk confirmed it. Her parents had forged her signature to sell the house. When Eliza confronted them, her mother's face hardened. "We raised you. That house is ours by right." But Eliza's lawyer found worse. The buyers were her father's business partners, planning to flip the house for triple the price. The courtroom buzzed as the judge reviewed evidence. Eliza's lawyer played a voicemail, her father whispering, "Just stall her until the sale closes." The buyers admitted under oath they'd split profits with her parents. The judge's gavel cracked. Fraud isn't a family value. The sale was voided, her parents fined, and Eliza's ownership cemented. But victory tasted bitter. Her brother called, apologizing through tears. "They lied to me too. Said you'd abandoned us." Eliza stood in her grandmother's house, sunlight filtering through dusty curtains. In the attic, she found a box of VHS tapes, home videos of her grandma laughing, pointing at the willow tree. "This is your roots, Eliza. Never let anyone tear them out." She repainted the walls, donated furniture to families in need, and turned the house into a free tutoring center. Kids' laughter soon replaced the silence. Months later, Eliza's parents sold their own home to pay debts. They showed up at her door, bags under their eyes. We're sorry," her mother muttered. Eliza handed them a pamphlet for the tutoring center. "You can volunteer if you want." They never came back. At the center's opening, Eliza hung her grandmother's antique locket by the entrance. Inside was a tiny photo of them both, smiling under the willow tree. Her brother arrived with coffee, hugging her tight. "Grandma would be proud," he said. As kids raced through the halls, Eliza finally understood. Some roots grow deeper than betrayal. Then an email arrived. The buyers, facing fraud charges, her parents, moving into a cramped apartment. And Eliza? She scrolled past their pleas for help, clicked on a new message. "We'd love to feature your center in our magazine." Smiling, she typed back, "Let's talk tomorrow." The willow tree swayed outside, its shadow stretching toward the future. The tutoring center thrived, its rooms buzzing with students and volunteers. News of the magazine feature spread, bringing donations and curious visitors. But with attention came whispers. One afternoon, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a blurry photo of the willow tree, captioned, "You think you've won." Eliza brushed it off until the next week, when the center's windows were smashed. Security footage showed a hooded figure, too familiar in their stride. Her brother paused the video, face pale. "That looks like Dad." Eliza's parents had vanished after losing their home, but rumors placed them in a nearby town. She hesitated to involve the police until a fire erupted in the storage shed. Firefighters found gasoline cans, stamped with the logo of her father's old company. The detective warned her, "This isn't over." That night, Eliza found her grandmother's journal hidden in a loose floorboard. Pages detailed a second property, a lakeside cabin, left solely to her. Her parents had known about it, but the deed was still in Eliza's name, untouched. She drove to the cabin, heart pounding. The door creaked open to reveal boxes of legal papers and childhood toys. Beneath a dusty rug lay a folder labeled medical bills, empty. Her parents' lies unraveled further. But as she flipped through, a photo slipped out. Her mother, decades younger, standing beside a man Eliza didn't recognize. The back read, "Forgive me, Clara." Clara, her grandmother's name. Eliza's lawyer uncovered the truth. Her mother had once tried to sell the cabin to this man, a shady investor, but Grandma Clara stopped it. The investor resurfaced now, demanding Eliza honor old agreements. She refused, but he threatened lawsuits. Meanwhile, her parents reappeared, begging for money. "We're family," her father pleaded. "That cabin could save us." Eliza stood firm. "You burned bridges, not me." The final blow came via text. Check the news. The investor had leaked fake documents, claiming Eliza stole the cabin. The magazine canceled her feature, but Eliza fought back, posting the real deed online, rallying the community. Students' parents shared stories of her kindness, drowning out the lies. The investor backed down, his past scams exposed. At the cabin's grand reopening, a shelter for domestic abuse survivors, Eliza hung her grandmother's journal in a glass case. Her brother arrived, handing her a key. "Dad's in rehab. Mom left." Eliza nodded, sadness and relief intertwining. As survivors settled in, one woman whispered, "You gave me hope." Days later, Eliza found a new letter. No threats this time, just a child's drawing of the tutoring center, signed, "Thank you, Miss Eliza." She pinned it beside her grandmother's locket. The willow tree outside the center bloomed wildly that spring, its branches stretching wider, as if guarding the stories within. Eliza sat under it, sipping coffee, when her phone buzzed. A notification the magazine wanted to reschedule. She smiled, watching kids chase butterflies. Some storms cleared the path for brighter days. The investor's defeat brought quiet to Eliza's life. For a while, the tutoring center flourished, its reputation unshaken, and the cabin shelter became a sanctuary praised in local papers. But peace never lasted long. One rainy evening, a woman appeared at the center's door, her mother, drenched and trembling. "I've got nowhere else to go," she whispered. Eliza hesitated, then let her in, handing her a towel. Her mother's hands shook as she confessed. The investor had threatened her, demanding money she didn't have. "He said he'd ruin you unless I helped him." Eliza's lawyer uncovered the truth. The investor had forged documents linking her mother to his scams. But this time, Eliza was ready. She rallied the community, parents, volunteers, even her brother, to flood social media with proof of her mother's coercion. News vans parked outside the investor's office, and by dawn, he fled town. Her mother, hollow-eyed, whispered, "I'm sorry," before disappearing again. Eliza didn't stop her. Months later, the center's anniversary party buzzed with laughter. Kids performed skits under the willow tree, now strung with fairy lights. As Eliza cut the cake, a courier arrived with a thick envelope. Inside were her grandmother's missing journals, sent anonymously. Pages revealed Clara's own battles, hiding the cabin from greedy relatives, building a life from nothing. The last entry read, "Strength isn't in fighting alone, but in knowing who to trust." The willow tree seemed to hum that night. Eliza found her father sitting beneath it, gaunt but sober. He handed her a rusted key. "Your mother's gone. Left this for you." It opened a safety deposit box containing deeds to 3 more properties Clara had secretly owned, all in Eliza's name. "She wanted you to have choices," her father mumbled before slipping away. Eliza used one property to build a scholarship fund, another for affordable housing. The third, she kept it quiet, a cottage by the sea where she'd retreat to write Clara's story. At the book's launch, her brother held up a copy, tears in his eyes. "Grandma's finally heard," he said. Years later, Eliza stood under the willow tree, now gnarled and wise. A girl tugged her sleeve, holding a drawing of the center. "When I grow up, I'll run a place like this," she declared. Eliza smiled, handing her the key to the cottage. "Start here," she said. The investor, jailed. Her parents, forgotten, not forgiven. And Eliza, she'd learned that roots, once shaken, grow back stronger. As the sun dipped, she glanced at Clara's locket, still gleaming by the door. Some legacies aren't in deeds or walls, but in the courage to plant new seeds. Years of peace unraveled one stormy autumn. Hurricane warnings blared as rain lashed the tutoring center's windows. Eliza rallied volunteers to move supplies to higher floors, but the willow tree, now a towering guardian, creaked dangerously. At dawn, a crack echoed through the neighborhood. The tree had fallen, its roots tearing open a hole in the yard. Inside it lay a rusted metal box. Eliza pried it open, finding a letter from her grandmother. If you're reading this, the tree gave its last strength to show you this truth. Beneath it was a map of the town with a marked plot. The Heartland, a meadow Clara had purchased to build a school, never realized. As floods swallowed the streets, Eliza turned the cabin shelter into a crisis center. Survivors poured in, including a face she never expected. Her mother, carrying a soaked toddler. I found her stranded, her mother said, avoiding Eliza's eyes. The child's parents were missing. Together they dried clothes and stirred soup, their silence heavy with unspoken regrets. Days later, the storm cleared, leaving the town in ruins. The mayor begged Eliza for help. Using Clara's map, she proposed building Heartland Village on the meadow, a mix of homes, a school, and a clinic. Donations poured in, but the investor's brother contested the land's ownership, waiving old deeds. Eliza's lawyer found the flaw. Clara had secretly transferred the land to Eliza's name days before her death. The courtroom erupted in cheers as the judge dismissed the claim. Construction began, but during the groundbreaking, Eliza collapsed. Tests revealed exhaustion, not illness. Bedridden, she watched her community rally, her brother overseeing builders, her mother organizing food drives, even former critics donating tools. The girl she'd rescued in the storm, now orphaned, glued herself to Eliza's side, sketching blueprints of her future office at Heartland. On opening day, Eliza stood weak but radiant, the new school's gates adorned with willow carvings. Her mother approached, pressing a pendant into her hand, a tiny seed encased in glass. Clara gave me this when you were born. I kept it to remind myself of her hope. Eliza clasped it, the seed symbolizing what they'd all buried and grown. That night, Eliza found a new journal entry in Clara's handwriting, tucked in an old cookbook. True legacy isn't in land or gold, but in the hands that keep building, she smiled. Years after Heartland Village blossomed, Eliza's life settled into a rhythm of quiet purpose. The school buzzed with children, the shelter housed hopeful families, and the meadow bloomed with wildflowers. But as seasons changed, so did challenges. A letter arrived from the state. A proposed highway threatened to cut through Clara's heart. Officials argued progress demanded sacrifice. Eliza's hands trembled, but her resolve didn't. We'll reroute around us, she told the town hall, rallying neighbors with petitions and protests. Her brother unearthed Clara's journals again, finding a faded protest pamphlet from her youth. Stand firm, Clara had scribbled in the margins. Eliza framed it in the school lobby, igniting a fire in the community. Students painted banners. Elders shared stories of Clara's own battles. And even Eliza's mother, now a regular volunteer, stood at rallies, her voice hoarse from shouting. The battle dragged on, but during a tense council meeting, a surprise ally emerged. The investor's estranged daughter. She leaked documents proving the highway's backers had ignored safer routes. The scandal made headlines, and the plan crumbled. Afterward, the woman handed Eliza a USB drive. My father's greed ruined lives. Let this fix some of it. Eliza's health, never fully recovered, began to wane. She trained the orphaned girl, now a fiery teen named Lila, to lead meetings and manage projects. You're my roots now, Eliza told her, pressing Clara's seed pendant into Lila's palm. One chilly morning, Eliza found her mother planting saplings along the meadow's edge. Willows, her mother said softly. They'll grow where the old tree fell. Eliza joined her, their gloves brushing as they worked. No words were needed. The earth said enough. At the village's 10th anniversary, Eliza sat under the young willows, Lila speaking passionately to the crowd. Her brother wheeled her forward to unveil a bronze plaque. Clara's heart, where roots meet sky. Cheers erupted, but Eliza's gaze lingered on her mother, now tending a community garden, and Lila, rallying the next generation. That night, Eliza opened Clara's final journal. Its last page, blank. She penned her own entry. Legacy isn't an end, it's a bridge. Walk it with faith, and others will follow. As fireflies lit the meadow, Eliza leaned back, her breath a quiet hymn to the stars. The willow leaves whispered secrets only she and Clara knew. Some storms had carved valleys, others planted forests. But here, under the watchful moon, Eliza knew. Her roots would outlive every season. The calm after the highway victory was short-lived. Winter arrived harsh and early, burying Heartland Village in snow thicker than anyone remembered. Roofs groaned under the weight, and pipes froze. Eliza, confined to a wheelchair by then, directed operations from the school's library, her voice steady over the crackling radio. But when the old community center's roof collapsed, trapping volunteers inside, Lila took charge. "Dig teams to the east wall. Medics on standby," she barked. Channeling Eliza's calm, under her command, they pulled everyone free, bruised but alive. Eliza's mother arrived with thermoses of soup, her hands raw from shoveling. She hesitated at Eliza's door, eyes glistening. I want to help. Properly." Eliza nodded to the radio. "Coordinate supply runs." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The crisis birthed an unexpected alliance. The investor's daughter, now a climate scientist, reached out with satellite maps predicting more storms. "Your grand's land has natural barriers," she said. "We can fortify them." Skeptics grumbled until Lila silenced them with a glare. Clara trusted the land. So do I. Eliza's health dipped sharply one icy dawn. Lila found her slumped over Clara's journal, a new entry half-written. "Roots hold best when storms shake them." At the clinic, doctors urged rest, but Eliza whispered, "There's more to do." That night, she gathered Lila, her brother, and her mother. "Plant the willow saplings by the riverbank. They'll anchor the soil when the thaw comes." The storm broke on the day they buried Eliza. Snow melted into floods, but the young willows held firm, their roots knitting the riverbank like Clara's old quilts. Lila stood at the edge, Eliza's seed pendant warm against her chest. She knew, the investor's daughter murmured, pointing to satellite images. The willows had redirected the floodwaters, saving the village. At the memorial, Eliza's brother read her final journal entry. "Legacy is a garden. Tend it, but let it grow wild." As the crowd dispersed, Lila spotted a sapling blooming prematurely by the clinic. A single white flower amid the snow. Weeks later, digging through Eliza's cottage, Lila found a sealed letter. "If you're reading this, you've met your first storm without me. Don't fear the wind. It carries old seeds to new soil. P.S. Check the attic. There, hidden under floorboards, lay plans for a greenhouse, Clara's last unrealized dream." Lila smiled, rallying the village. "We're building it. For herbs, for healing, for her." When spring finally thawed the land, Eliza's mother knelt by the greenhouse, planting the first seeds. "For Clara," she whispered. "And for you, Eliza." The willow flower pressed in Clara's journal never wilted. They say on quiet nights, its scent still lingers by the river, a reminder that even endings can bloom. The greenhouse stood complete by summer, its glass walls glittering under the sun. Lila organized its first planting day, children burying seeds in rich soil. But as laughter filled the air, a black SUV crawled down the road. A sleek-suited man emerged, waving a document. "This land's been flagged for commercial development. You've got 30 days to vacate." Panic rippled until Lila remembered Eliza's words. "Check the attic." Rushing to the cottage, she found a dusty folder labeled "Defenses." Inside were letters between Clara and a long-dead mayor, granting the land eternal protection as a community trust. Eliza had renewed the pact years ago. "The developer's lying," Lila declared at a town meeting. "This land is ours." The man returned with police, demanding proof. Eliza's mother stepped forward, clutching Clara's original seal. "Try again," she spat, her voice steel. The officers left, but the developer hissed, "This isn't over." That night, vandals smashed the greenhouse. Lila knelt in the glass shards, weeping until a crunch made her look up. The investor's daughter stood there, toolbox in hand. "I'm an engineer now," she said. "Let's rebuild it stronger." As they worked, Lila discovered symbols carved into the greenhouse's foundation, Clara's initials entwined with willow leaves. "She planned this," the engineer murmured. Reinforced frames under the wood. She knew storms would come. The developer sued, but the judge, a former student from the tutoring center, dismissed the case, citing Clara's ironclad documents. Defeated, the man spat at Lila. "You'll regret this," she smiled. "We've survived worse. At the greenhouse's reopening, Eliza's mother hung wind chimes made from broken glass. Beauty from rubble, she said, meeting Lila's gaze. The first seedlings sprouted days later, unusually fast, their leaves veined silver. The engineer ran tests, stunned. The soil's rich in minerals Clara must have buried decades ago. She prepared this land. Lila found a final letter in Eliza's desk, unopened. The willows whisper when to fight and when to grow. Listen. That evening, she walked to the riverbank. The saplings leaned westward, their branches pointing to a shadowed patch of earth. Digging, Lila uncovered a time capsule, Clara's wedding ring, a deed to undiscovered acreage, and a photo of Eliza as a child, grinning under the willow. The next morning, Lila rallied the village. Clara left us more land. We're expanding, a wildlife sanctuary. Even the developer's daughter joined, drafting blueprints. Years later, as Lila toured the sanctuary, a girl tugged her sleeve. "Are you the lady who beats bad guys?" Lila chuckled. "Number, I'm just someone who listens to trees." Eliza's mother passed peacefully in her sleep, a sprig of silver-leafed willow in her hand. At her funeral, the old greenhouse bloomed overnight, flowers bursting through cracks, climbing toward the sun. The developer? His company collapsed after a scandal. The last willow sapling from Eliza's time split a boulder in two, its roots claiming even the concrete he'd poured. Lila still visits the riverbank, the wind-carrying whispers only she understands. Some say it's Eliza, others say it's the willows. But the seeds don't care. They grow anyway, stubborn and bright, turning every ending into a defiant beginning. The sanctuary thrived, its forest teeming with life and the greenhouse brimming with silver-leafed plants that seemed to glow at dusk. But drought crept in, a relentless sun baking the earth, rivers shrinking to threads. Crops withered and tensions simmered. Some villagers muttered about abandoning Clara's land. "We can't fight nature," an elder argued. Lila stared at Eliza's seed pendant, now warm against her skin even in the heat. "Listen to the willows," she heard Eliza whisper. At the riverbed, now cracked and dry, Lila found the oldest willow leaning sharply, its roots exposed. Beneath them, a glint caught her eye, a rusted pipe. The engineer arrived, eyes widening. "It's an old irrigation system. Clara must have built it." Maps in the time capsule confirmed it. Tunnels channeling groundwater, forgotten for decades. The village dug, hands blistering under the sun. Lila's brother unearthed a valve, twisting it until a groan echoed underground. Water erupted, clear and cold, soaking the parched soil. Cheers echoed, but Lila noticed her brother's silence. "What's wrong?" He showed her a carved stone buried near the pipe. "When the earth cracks, the heart remembers." Clara. The drought broke weeks later, storms drenching the land. But the downpour revealed cracks in the sanctuary's oldest cabin, a hidden room behind the walls. Inside, yellowed letters detailed Clara's deepest regret. A feud with her sister over the land, never mended. She wanted peace, Lila realized. The engineer pointed to a date on a letter. "That's tomorrow, 100 years to the day Clara's sister left." Lila organized a gathering at the cabin, inviting descendants of Clara's estranged sister. A silver-haired woman arrived, clutching identical letters. "My grandma never stopped grieving," she said. Together, they planted a twin willow by the river. "No more ghosts," the woman murmured. That night, Lila dreamt of Eliza and Clara standing in the greenhouse, their hands brushing the silver leaves. "Roots heal when shared," Eliza said. Dawn found Lila at Eliza's grave, a sapling sprouting through the headstone, its leaves shaped like hearts. The developer's daughter, now the sanctuary's lead architect, handed Lila a blueprint. "Clara's sister's family wants to fund a bridge, connecting their town to ours. It would span the river, named the Sisters' Span." At the groundbreaking, Lila spotted her brother laughing with the engineer, their fingers entwined. Eliza's mother, now frail, pressed a dried willow blossom into Lila's palm. "She'd love this," she said, watching children chase fireflies. As stars emerged, Lila knelt by the new willow, its leaves already whispering. A breeze swirled, warm as a hug, carrying the scent of rain and fresh soil. Somewhere, she knew Eliza was smiling. Not because the fight was over, but because the circle held. Storms would come, droughts would return, But roots, once tangled, now stretched deeper, wide enough to hold the whole sky. The village celebrated Clara's heart centennial under a sky streaked with sunset gold. Banners fluttered, children danced around the willow grove, and elders shared tales of Eliza's battles. Yet as fireworks lit the night, a tremor shook the earth, a rare earthquake splitting the meadow. The newly built sisters' span cracked, its center sagging into the river. Panic surged until Lila climbed onto the bridge's railing, holding Eliza's seed pendant high. Clara's land has survived worse. We check the roots now. Digging at the fracture, the engineer uncovered Clara's final secret: stone pillars buried deep, carved with willow leaves. "It's a foundation grid," she shouted. Clara had designed the land to shift, not break. The quake was actually ancient springs surging back to life, reshaping the earth. The bridge settled into a new, sturdier curve. Its arch mirrored perfectly in the river below. But in the chaos, Lila spotted a faded envelope wedged in the stones. Inside was Clara's last letter, unread. "To the keeper of my heart, when the land moves, plant this where it breathes." Taped to the page was a seed, iridescent as a pearl. The next dawn, the village gathered at the earthquake's epicenter. Lila pressed the seed into the damp soil. By noon, a sapling shot up, its bark silver, leaves shimmering like moonlight. The engineer laughed tearfully. Clara bred a hybrid willow, unknowable, unbreakable. That night, Lila dreamt of Eliza and Clara standing by the tree. "Some roots grow in spirals," Eliza said, pointing to the sapling. "Endings are just new circles." Years flowed. The sanctuary expanded, the silver willow its compass. Lila's hair whitened, but her spirit burned bright. At her retirement ceremony, she gifted the seed pendant to a shy girl, Mira, the orphan from the storm, now a fierce young botanist. "Your turn," Lila whispered. Eliza's brother, gray and grinning, unveiled a plaque by the willow. "For Eliza, who taught us storms carve rivers." Her mother's garden, now wild with medicinal herbs, perfumed the air. The investor's daughter, hair streaked with silver, knelt beside Mira, sketching plans for a floating greenhouse. "Clara's blueprints never end," she winked. As twilight fell, Lila sat beneath the silver willow, its leaves chiming in the breeze. A child's laughter echoed, Mira's daughter chasing fireflies. Clara's journal tucked under her arm. The moon rose, casting the meadow in blue. Somewhere, a seed pod burst, scattering glimmering specks like stars. Legacy, Lila realized, wasn't a line, but a spiral. A dance of endings and beginnings, anchored by roots that refused to quit. She closed her eyes. The willows hum a lullaby. Above, the stars twinkled, each one a seed waiting to grow.